For the past year, I've been on a mission to prove to the world that Centurions are the best unit in all of 40k. I've been to event after event, perfecting my army list that contains no less than 18 of the chunkiest lads in the galaxy, refining my plans and fine-tuning the list to create the most optimized force to ever grace an L-shaped ruin-filled battlefield. It hasn't gone well. After 68 games, I've finished my first year of competition with a 31.8% win rate. Despite getting close to greatness a few times, the Screaming Ravens just haven't been able to keep up, and to be honest, my faith is starting to waver. Maybe 18 Centurions isn't the best way to play 40k. Perhaps there is a problem with having only 1,000 points to spend on units that can actually fully move through a ruin in one turn because the bases aren't so bloody big. Maybe Centurions really are going to Legends and I've been squandering them and wasting my last precious moments with my beloved models by throwing them into the meat grinder. They're going to disappear forever. Oh, please, God, no, don't leave me, no! Or maybe the issue is that I've been trying to use units that are not the most glorious creation man has ever produced, and that has been holding me back. Clearly, Centurions are not the problem here. It's all this other garbage in my list. Jump pack intercessors, Athan Shan, lieutenant with combi weapon. These staples of most competitive Space Marine lists are just getting in the way of my true potential. So it's time to stop pissing about and play a list with some chest hair. This is a real army. 36 Centurions, the most you could possibly include. 3 units of both delicious flavors of double armored supremacy, with enough points to include a single ancient to ensure legality. Yes, I'm aware this is a Blade Guard ancient model, not an ancient model, but the ancient gets 4+ feel no pain on objectives, and frankly, if someone wants to complain about this proxy when I'm bringing 36 Centurions, that says a lot more about them than me. After a very quick coat of paint, because I was in Japan until the week before, my 36 masterpieces were ready to head to the South Coast Super Major, home of my first ever proper competitive event, to prove once and for all the dominance of the Centurion, and to show that Paul is bad stuff could evolve into Paul is the best player in the entire world. Hey, at least it was better than last year. Just. Now, the first question you're probably asking is, how does a list like this actually work? It doesn't. Imagine playing Imperial or Chaos Knights, but you move at 30% normal speed, are less durable, have more trouble getting in positions to deal damage, and any damage you take makes your damage output considerably worse. Okay, to be fair, there are some positives with this list. It looks cool, I guess. It also does actually play some delightful mind games with your opponents because Centurions are consistently intimidating. It's a weird defensive profile that some armies have no great answers to, and if they do get their damage off, anything you point at them will die. And finally, if you want to play an army with the goal of playing as little Warhammer as possible, then this list is for you. Normally, my games take me to nearly the end of the time limit at tournaments, but thanks to 36 Centurions, I only had one game that went over 2 hours. And most of that was my opponents playing whilst I got to sit down and watch my Centurions fall over one by one. Not even Gladius Task Force can save this list. With no way to generate command points and no way to reduce the cost of stratagems, you're basically banking on secondary discarding to get any sort of use out of the detachment outside of the rule, especially without any points to spend on enhancements. But don't worry, you'll be discarding a lot of secondary cards because trying to do any actions or any positioning-based objectives are completely pointless. Not even fixed secondaries would help because outside of hoping for an army that gives up both Bring It Down and Assassination, none of the other options are at all useful or viable. I thought with Gladius having the ability to advance and shoot, or advance and charge, or fall back, shoot and charge would be amazing, and it was certainly useful, but then you realize that with an average advance roll, you're still only moving just slightly faster than a normal Space Marine, and you won't be keeping up with any Eldari models. Even if you roll max advance, you still move slower than most vehicles and jump packs. If you can get onto objectives, you hold them quite well, but good luck getting there in time before your opponent has flooded the board. Even then, being on the objectives also sucks, because despite the 4 wounds, 2 up save, and toughness 7, they aren't exactly the hardest things to kill. When a single 100-point Khan the Betrayer can kill 4 of them in a single combat, you haven't got a hope in hell of holding anything until you can actually score them. This army has no scouts, no infiltrate, no deep strike, no redeploy, no command point manipulation, no uppy downy, no access to lethal hits, sustained hits, devastating wounds, and no invulnerable saves. It has no way to do actions consistently, no way to screen and hold objectives simultaneously, no way to viably hold your home objective, and with only 7 units total, it's trivial for your opponent to destroy 1 unit and completely tank your army's potential. This army list is quite possibly one of the worst lists that you could possibly bring to the tabletop across any faction. But it is very funny. I had an absolute blast playing this list, but having played 5 games across a grueling weekend, the joke is well and truly run into the ground. And you know that's bad when it's coming from me. It's Pikachu! Unlike 18 Centurions, it isn't exactly a way to improve the list. There's no wiggle room for changes outside of the detachment, and the other viable options I was considering just don't make up for the shortcomings of having nothing but slow-moving walking tanks. It is a complete meme and was a lot of fun to do once, but I'm never doing this again. But something I will do again is tell you all about the magnetic wonder box known as the Magcase 2.0. Oh, yeah, baby. It's been over a month since my last video, but I bet the thing you've been really missing is the sponsor time. You can legit fit over 100 Centurions into a Magcase 2.0. I don't really see what else needs to be said to convince you to go to table.stronghold.com right now and get yourself the best carry case that utilizes the power of magnets. So instead, I'm just going to tell you a funny Magcase related story. So someone came up to me at South Coast Measure. I forget your name. I'm so sorry. And they were carrying their Magcase and told me they were a big fan of the channel and that this was their first tournament because of my videos. They wanted me to sign the Magcase that they brought, but they forgot to bring a Sharpie and no one else had one, so I couldn't sign it. And I still feel a little bit bad about it. Like, if I had a Sharpie, I could have done it. But then if I started carrying a Sharpie around and then pulled it out when people asked me to sign something, I feel like that would be a bit presumptuous and make me look like a knobhead. Like, oh yeah, I'm a big boy YouTuber. Of course you want me to deface your property. You know what I mean? Like, feels a bit big-headed, you know? Like, that's an expectation. But then I still feel really bad that I couldn't sign this guy's thing because he wanted me to, so I don't know. So if you also want the chance to make me anxiously overthink basic human interactions, then make sure to click the links below and get yourself a Magcase 2.0 using the code PAUL25 for 25% off, and you can get free shipping. Thank you once again to Table Stronghold for sponsoring my fragile ego. Game 1 was against Paulie, who was a super nice guy, bringing a beautifully crafted Drukhari Spectacle of Spike Force, which you can check out on his Instagram. And it's even been featured on Warcom and in White Dwarf. So go check him out over on Instagram at SkySerpent40k. And once you've done that, come back here, continue the video, and make sure to subscribe. I don't know what it is about Drukhari content creators of being the nicest people in the world, and honestly, it probably says more about me, seeing as I gravitated away from Dark Elder into being a Space Marine playing basic bit. But despite being as lovely as an opponent as he is, Paulie's list is still all kinds of lightning-fast Bladestorm hell. No Reavers with their absurd movement speed, but still 2 big blocks of Hellions, all the horrible murdering characters, and more witches than an edgy 2000s high school emo phase. However, there are a couple of interesting bonus pieces here. Paulie has brought Drazar amongst the cast of Comorar's most dastardly of killers, but without a retinue of Incubi to back him up. Paulie has also included a new Karseth and 5 Corsairs. Karseth helps the rest of his army punch up, which is nice, especially into my tough infantry, and he also does other stuff, probably. I don't really know, and it doesn't really matter. We are playing Terraform on the Sweeping Engagement deployment, and if you've played this game in any capacity, that should really be enough of a battle report to work out what happened in this game. For those who are unfamiliar with 40k, let me break it down for you. Terraform rewards you for completing an action on objectives outside your deployment zone, so these 3 in the middle and your opponent's home. No Man's Land objectives are between 8 and 12 inches away from the edge of the deployment zone on each side. You cannot advance and do actions on the same turn. I move 4 inches, Paulie moves a minimum of 8. And despite the insistence from 4 inches is just not enough. So by the end of his turn 2, Paulie was on all 3 objectives in No Man's Land, with all of them terraformed before I'd even had a chance to put my ass-kicking boots on. And from there, it was just a case of sending the murderous Dark Elves into whatever block of Centurions he could see, with each of his units trading up massively into mine. 170 points of Hellions in Spectacle of Spite can easily defeat 300 points of Centurions. I did manage to fight on death with this squad here and actually destroy all 10 Hellions in return, but each defeated unit for me takes away so much more of my potential versus his. And also, basic maths, 170 is less than 300.
The numbers don't lie!
The game was over by turn 3, especially when I managed to draw Area Denial and establish Locust when I only had 2 units Devastating Centurions left still in my deployment zone. The only reason this game ended 100 to 40 was that after a redraw, Paulie was nice enough to give me some targets to try and get marked for death. Taking out his Archon and Malus was a final, fleeting taste of victory before I was tabled. Yeah. Get used to this, it's gonna happen a lot. Oh, also at some point during the game, I tried to kill a witch squad with 3 devastated Centurions. Missiles killed all but 1, and the last cannons failed to kill a single witch. All but one of them missed, even with a reroll. Then to wound, I rolled a 1 into a 1. It's inconsequential to the overall game, but I'm just adding it to the ledger of times my dice think they're so goddamn hilarious. I did also kill one of his raiders with a single assault Centurion, thanks to Saint 2 and some lucky rolls, but I'm going to ignore that moment of dice rolling in my favor and only highlight the unlucky roll so I don't have to look inwards at my own failings to reflect and improve, and can instead blame something intangible outside of my control for all the problems in my life. Paulie would go on to finish in 6th place with a 6-1 record, which weirdly closely mirrors last year where I played against Ben Jones, who went on to win the whole thing. Just a funny coincidence, game 1 into someone who gets to the top tables, but nothing to really think about too hard. Game 2 was against Steve, who's a super nice guy, even if he is a guard-playing piece of shit. Steve's list is light on tanks, but heavy on throwing wave after wave of men at you. A single Rogel door with a few transports try and maneuver around the scrambling of well over 100 guardsmen in various forms. A lot of them with command squads, including a massive 27-man unit of Cadians. Unfortunately for Steve, this mission is Purge the Foe. Steve has 23 units. I have 7. I love Purge the Foe because it's the only primary mission that I can actually score. Seeing as you only need to hold 1 for 4 points, and instead of trying to hold more, I can just definitely kill more. So at worst, I can at least keep up with the primary, and then it's just down to secondaries. We both deployed as far forward as possible, priming the powder keg to explode at some point during the game. Steve gets the first turn and sets up positions ready to flood the board. On my first turn, I was ready to essentially mirror Steve by moving a few things up for a counterpunch, but Steve is a master of mind games and tried to tempt me into declaring a turn 1 advance charge with the assault doctrine. I couldn't resist. I thought I'd got over my turn 1 overextending habit. I thought I was clean. I thought I was out. But when 12 assault Centurions have a shot at getting into all that guardsman metal, my vision just goes red. My mind empties and I have to kill. Okay, look, I said Steve was a master of mind games, but realistically, with this army, doing stupid Hail Marys is basically the only way to play. Because it's funny. What makes that kind of play even funnier is when it actually works. I rolled an 11-inch charge, getting into Chimera and annihilating it with Sieges. What makes that play even better for me is that gives me 4 points for Purge the Foe and 2 points for no prisoners. Steve now has to deal with this thick wall of angry steel that has just burst through the wall at Mach Infinity, which works especially well when we discover that killing Centurions is doable for Steve, but it takes basically his entire army. The deadliest weapon seems to be the plasmas scattered throughout the army. Wounding on 3s with AP3 combined with my inability to roll save higher than A3 does wonders at picking up Centurions. But picking up 1 unit per round doesn't compare to the brutality that I can bring. Unfortunately, though, by charging in so early, it meant that Steve didn't really have to expose himself to me in round 2. I should phrase that one better. Let me try that one again. By charging in so early, it meant that Steve didn't have to expose any of his army to me in round 2, meaning that I only managed to match him on the kill counter, holding me to a lower primary score. I would only make up that deficit in round 5, where I do manage to actually do enough work to deny Steve 4 points for holding more. After a close back and forth game, it comes down to my turn 5, where I draw Cull the Horde. I have most of a squad of Assault Centurions able to walk over towards the heavily damaged Cadian squad, ready to burn them alive with flamers. This would weirdly be the first time all tournament I've actually managed to fire the flamers, and these squishy oath-up targets would truly feel the heat of these flamers coming from the flamer Assault Centurions. All but the characters met a fiery demise to my flamers before I moved on to the bolters, giving Steve a massive amount of saves to make after that onslaught with the flamers. It was just before Steve rolled the bolter saves that I looked at my models and realized that they are not equipped with flamers. Those are melters. Fortunately, because I caught my mistake just before Steve rolled the save on the bolters, we essentially rolled back, so the bolter saves were going on to the Cadians that had died to the now non-existent flamers. And as luck would have it, my mistake was easily rectified because the bolters did exactly the same amount of damage as the flamers, so it kind of all came out in the wash. But that then also meant I now have melters to fire at the 2 characters, which managed to finish off the whole squad, granting me 5 points for Cull the Horde. And with that, I was able to eke out a very close-fought victory, 80 to 76, all thanks to the power of not having to hold objectives or do actions. God, I can't wait for 11th edition. Steve was a great opponent, and this was a lot of fun. And this game also weirdly matches last year, where I won my second game on Purge the Foe by 4 points against a T3 infantry-heavy opponent. Huh. That is weird, but not entirely unexpected, right? Just another funny coincidence. Nothing to worry about. I can't see the rest of my tournament going like that. Game 3 was against Ryan, who was a super nice guy. And I actually met Ryan at the London GT alongside some of the hobby henchman guys. I'm terrible with names, so I do apologize. But when the pairings came up, I didn't recognize his name, but I did recognize his list. This game is going to be amazing. Ryan is playing Imperial Knights, but it's the kind of Imperial Knight list that makes you feel like you're Arnie in a 90s action film. 2 Knight Lancers, 2 Knight Atroposes, and a Gallant. It's 5 high-impact, extremely fast giant robots of hyperdeath. There's not much more you can ask for than that. This is peak 40k. Now, the first decision I needed to make was, do I want to go fixed secondaries here? All 5 of Ryan's units give up Bring It Down and Assassinate, so killing them would make for easy points, and I wouldn't have to worry about actions. However, getting into a fight with them requires precision, because those knights will absolutely butcher anything they touch. So there is a chance I don't actually kill that many, and trying to get around to do other things might work better in my favor, especially with the opportunity to discard some of those secondaries for bonus command points. Additionally, I'm not a goddamn coward, so I decided to go with tactical secondaries. We are playing Hidden Supplies on the Search and Destroy deployment, and we both deploy for a scrap. I get the first turn roll-off, which puts me into a bit of a predicament, and I have to make some tough decisions here. The deployment zones are pretty close, so with an advance and charge, I could quite easily get Assault Centurions into 2 of his knights. And those siege drills, combined with Oath of Moment on one of the knights, could really put Ryan behind if I managed to get 2 knights straight off the bat. The Gallant isn't too bad, but the Lancer might be trickier with that 4-up invulnerable save. My other option is to play it safe and try to avoid the fight, moving as far as I can towards my expansions without putting myself into the line of sight of the mass strength 14 AP3 damage 4 shooting, especially when its sustained hits 1. It is a short range of only 24 inches, so that might be manageable, and it also goes well with the fact that I've chosen tactical. Then my longer range las cannons can try and whittle them down. However, my big worry here is the movement of these knights. The Atropos and the Gallant move 12 inches, and the Lancers move 14. Unless I play incredibly cagey and get around the ruins, I won't really be able to make it far before they run me down. And with his ability to stick objectives, it's trivial for Ryan to get onto any objectives, sticky them, and then charge me down before I even had a chance to walk out my front door. If those Atroposes get into range, their weapons are perfectly designed for Centurion killing. And even without the AP, the Knight Lancers can force so many saves that it's bound to kill a couple before hitting me in the face with damage 8 melee. The Gallant is no slouch either, with devastating wounds on damage 6 or 8 attacks, some of which are AP 4. And really, my list is not exactly made for surgical precision. It's made to fight. So I really have no choice. I enter the Assault Doctrine, ready to take the fight to the big bad knights. A true David versus Goliath story. The Assault Centurions of the Screaming Ravens fire up their warsuits. The siege drills rev to life, and they bravely breach through no man's land to take a fight directly into the face of those titanic terrors. All or nothing, boys. Shut. Day 2 begins with game 4 against Andrew, who's a super nice guy. Andrew was playing World Eaters, which I hadn't actually played against since the last South Coast Super Major. Outside of a couple of new units, it was a lot of blood-crazed murder that I was familiar with. We were playing on... Look, I don't really need to explain how this game went, do I? It was a fun game. Andrew was a great opponent, but it's fast, deadly melee versus Centurions. How do you think it went? Anything Andrew touches dies, and he doesn't exactly have a hard time doing that. But Card alone can kill 4 Centurions. What chance do I have against the likes of Angron, a Demon Prince, 8-Bound, and a Slaughter Brute? I can't screen that out and also do anything else, and my home objective was lost in turn 3. And when I can't even kill a single Rhino in melee because my Assault Centurions refuse to roll 6s for 8 hits too, there isn't exactly much I can do. My units do not trade well, and I can't hold objectives, so yeah, I got overrun. Game 4 against a fast melee army that overruns me. Where have I seen that one before? If game 5 ends up being a close defeat against a red-themed army, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. Game 5 was against Sam, who's a super nice guy, and Sam was playing Admech. This list is certainly... Admech. I don't know much about Admech outside of the fact they seem annoyingly complicated to play, but this has a lot of stuff I've seen before. That complexity, however, will work in my favor, as this is game 5, and playing an army like Admech for 5 rounds is going to cause your brain to explode. Meanwhile, I've been able to play with my brain switched off, as most of my turns take less than 5 minutes, and every game I've played has lasted less than 2 hours. So I've had a nice long lunch and got to sit down as Sam's brain had to go into overdrive to try and pilot these overzealous futuristic tech bros. This was going to be a tough match, especially with take and hold. Wait, hang on, where's Admech? I've played against Admech before. I've played against Brett, and I've put it in a video. Where's Admech? Did I just not do it? I set up fairly aggressively, quite far up my deployment zone, even basically the front line. Oh my god, I didn't do it when I played against Brett because it was so short. God damn it, Passport, you lazy fuck! Trying to match primary was going to be an issue against the high number of units and speed tricks Sam has access to, as well as having sticky on a lot of his battle line. But outside of a few chickens, his actual ability to take me down is somewhat scuppered. I was going first, which isn't ideal, but I move out to get some positioning and to give Sam some targets for his Laz chickens. My hope here is that it would expose some of them in my turn 2 without taking much of a loss. Sam would need a big advanced roll to get them all out to draw a bead, and even if he uses the crits on 5s and 6s strapped with Oath and Moment, I should be able to use Armor and Contempt to weather the storm and keep a few of the Centurions in this squad alive, especially as he hits on 4s normally. So, of course, in Sam's turn 1, every single advance roll he makes is a 6, and those Iron Striders immediately roll all but 1 attack as a 5 or 6 without even needing to reroll, giving me 10 saves of 4 up, which I make 1. I do annihilate them in return, just thanks to my consistent damage rolls of low when they have full health and high when they're nearly dead. But otherwise, I continue to position and try and get to my expansion, as well as move towards this other not well defended objective here. Sam still has a lot left in his deployment zone, electing to play safe with those rangers lest they get blasted as soon as they so much as put a foot beyond the ruin, and his fastest Caesarians remain ready in transports or in reserves. Then on Sam's turn 2, he wants to do the exact same thing he did on turn 1 with these Laz chickens into these Centurions. So of course, every single advance roll he makes is a 1, the Iron Striders immediately roll all but 1 attack as a 1 or 2 with rerolls, giving me 1 save to make, which I do still fail and lose a Centurion, but damn, that variance is brutal. That's the same exact situation, going from killing 6 Centurions to 1. I don't get what people are complaining about when they say rerolls remove variance from the game. Seems fine to me. The dice seem to just flip-flop for both of us all game. I think Sam's dice were allergic to the numbers 3 and 4, and my dice continue to make fun of me by rolling nothing but 2s when I'm looking for 3s and rerolling 1s, or making me fail 2-up saves but tanking heavy damage. The game actually remains relatively competitive, and I'm actually scoring at least 10 points for primary, keeping up with Sam's score. The secondaries are hard to come by. My overall losses, though, were quite small, and eventually I managed to actually get into the situation that this list dreams of, that this list is designed to do. On turn 4, this was the center objective. Good luck taking that one back. Additionally, this objective here, thanks to a nice rapid ingress play, if I do say so myself, and Sam failing a 3-inch charge, but we won't talk about that, was also equally swamped with Centurions, with nothing in range to really stop them. And all it cost me was my home objective, because I couldn't screen out the Caesarians that could drop down and take out my poor Ancient. My Centurions were able to keep Sam at bay from the center objective, defiant last stand against the onslaught of Admech gunfire. But with his home, my home, and this objective here, there was no way to stop him getting 15 points for the primary on the last 2 turns. Unless I manage to charge these Cataphrons with this fully operational unit of Assault Centurions. I have no command points, so I can't advance and charge. I just have to do it. And it needs to be long enough that I can then consolidate onto his home objective. And then they'd have to survive Sam's turn 5 shooting. But without those destroyers, that might not be impossible. I move out and Sam overwatches with the destroyers. And thanks once again to my inability to make a safe hide on the 3, I lose 2 Centurions before I even attempt the charge. I need a 10 to get in. A 12 would allow me to try and take the objective. I roll a 10. One final cruel joke from the dice. Rolling high for a doomed charge, but not high enough to make a difference. Still, with just 4 Assault Centurions, I can at least heavily damage those destroyers. Out of 12 attacks, I roll 7 6s. Cataphrons aren't vehicles. Where were those 6s earlier when I was fighting literally any monster or vehicle? This is not an exaggeration. I rolled 0 against Angle with rerolls or against the World Eater's Rhino, and I barely did any against the Knights. I rolled no 6s against the Chimera, but as soon as these silly trolls get a whiff of infantry, I suddenly manifest the hottest rolls on the goddamn planet. Why must you torment me? A 93-71 defeat, but a closer final game against a red-themed army, rounding off my South Coast Super Major 2025. Wait, I mean 2026. So in conclusion, I spent a year playing Warhammer and ended up literally at the exact same place as when I started. Game 1 drubbing versus an eventual top tabler, a Game 2 4-point victory on Purge the Foe against Mass T3 Infantry, a Game 3 ultra quick defeat against a fast melee army, Game 4 overrunning by fast melee power armor, and Game 5 closer defeat against a red-themed army. I am trapped in an endless cycle of inevitable mediocrity. Time is a flat circle of which there is no escape. Or something like that, I suppose. I mean, look, I played 36 Centurions, okay? It's not exactly that deep. I had a fun event, even if I played a total of like 2 hours of Warhammer, most of which was in Game 5. My opponents were a delight, and I got to meet a lot of people. So thank you to everyone who came up to me and said hello. I do really appreciate that, and hearing about how so many of you have started going to events because of these videos and are having fun, it really does make this all worthwhile. But I am sick of losing, and I don't want 10th edition to end like this. I need to know for certain, am I really bad at stuff? What would happen if I tried? What would happen if I actually learned how to play properly? If I practiced? If I made a real list? If I started each game with an actual plan? If I played anywhere close to optimally? If I turned myself from the fun clown you see before you into a powerful wargaming automaton? It's time for me to prove to the world and to prove to myself that I'm more than just the clown. I must become the very thing I sought to destroy. I must become the very thing I've been trying to show to everyone that they don't have to become to go to these events. Now that I've convinced casuals to go to these events, it's time for me to destroy them. I will become perfect.